All right, so hardly a conversation ends in Nigeria today without making reference to the 2023 general election, but also the flood that is currently ravaging a lot of communities in the country today. Yes, a lot of communities have been submerged by the flood, and of course living its regular trademark of tears and sorrow. And you wonder that after the 2022 experience where lots of lives were lost and properties worth billions of dollars destroyed, it would have been that, okay, necessary measures will be taken to avert future occurrences. But what we are experiencing today in Nigeria is far worse. And if nothing is done, of course, more will be experienced, negotiating or talking about the future flood in the country. But you wonder, was it down to the fact that necessary actions were not taken? How well have we done in terms of climate change adaptation? Is it down to the individual actions, building on waterways? Or is it all about the excess water released from the Lagdo Dam? And what happened to that counterpart, dam that was supposed to be constructed in Nigeria that should have been twice the size of that of Lagdo Dam? Well, all these questions we hope to engage the resource persons that will be joining us much later to have a better perspective to some of these issues, because the goal is to avert future occurrence. Of course, we're going to have the DG NIMED join us, and also the Honorable Minister of Water Resources, Engineer Suleiman Adamu, come talk to us about this flood that we are experiencing in the country as we speak. Welcome. My name is Suleiman Babajia Usman. All right, welcome back to the studio. And if you just join us, this is Weekend Deal. And today we're going to be talking about the 2022 flood that is ravaging a lot of communities in Nigeria today. And right now we take this background report, and after that, we talk more.
From China to Germany and part of the United States, countries across the world have been devastated by deadly floods, bringing widespread destruction, in some cases to entire communities, some of which have never witnessed extreme weather like this. Could this be associated with climate change?
Flooding is a consequence of climate change. What is climate change? Simply put, it's just the inability of the climate to regulate itself. But technically, it's the rise in the Earth's average temperature that have monumental effect on the world weather and climate. So the World Meteorological Organization told you that, look, there will be flooding, the rain will fall, but climate change have 30% of increasing it. The amount of water in the atmosphere have increased since 1990 from 5% to 20%. What does that mean? That means the rain that you are supposed to fall in a year now falls under 24 hours. So you are going to have flooding.
Recent flooding in Nigeria has become an overwhelming disaster that has been more severe than the last major flood in 2012. From available records, more than 600 people have died. Some 1.3 million people have been displaced, and more than 200,000 homes have been destroyed.
It's a national catastrophe that is overwhelming the sub-national level. That is why the national level is coming in fully. And the biggest problem in flooding is not the water itself, it's what is called flood stage. That is the after effect of the flood. You are going to have diseases like cholera, malaria, dysentery, and all. Then you are going to have a surging hunger because it has decimated all the farms, the rice farm, yam farm and all. So a similar peak like this was in 2012. It went down, picked up again in 2017. Early in the year in January, you saw the slope was very high. But anytime you have snow, the weather is very cold, you are going to have catastrophic flooding.
Flooding has become an annual event for Nigerian cities, yet we are always caught unprepared. Nigeria's meteorological agency has warned that the flooding could continue until the end of November in some states, including Anambra, Delta, Rivers, Cross River and Bayelsa.
Nobody is unprepared. Can you say the US is unprepared? No. The tendency now has been increased by climate change. If you make preparation this year, next year you're going to make no sense of it. There's no amount of preparation you can do with climate change because you are not in control of the amount of water that is coming in. Worst flooding that humanity can remember happened in 1927 in Mississippi. What did they do? They have to invest in infrastructure. And preparedness for flooding is possible in Nigeria, but it will come at a very high cost.
Nigeria has several dams along its rivers, ranging from huge hydroelectric stations to smaller constructions for irrigation and fishing. These structures can in theory help manage water levels, but in reality many have been poorly managed, contributing to the buildup of water levels, thus endangering nearby towns and villages. Some have argued that the release of excess water from dams in neighboring Cameroon could be one of the factors responsible for the recent flooding in Nigeria.
This year's zone, like every other year, has been aggravated by the Lago Dam. Lago Dam is 308 meters long, 40 meters high, and 9 meters thick. Do you understand? It has a space, an area of 586 meters square. That's a large amount of water. If you are going to release water from 40 meters high, you know what that is? The water staying there has a lot of potential energy, and when it's coming down, it has kinetic energy. So if you are going to harvest that water, you need something 3 to 4 times more than where it is coming from. That's why you need a dam to break it, or series of dams. You know, it empties into River Benue. After the flood happened in Mississippi, what did they do? They raised their bridges, they raised everything well above the water level, because flooding affect economic security, health security, food security, water security, and above all, national security.
As floods continue to devastate areas of Nigeria year in, year out, the environmental, economic, and most importantly, the human casualties are always very huge. Therefore, the need for all stakeholders to adopt strategies to curb the challenge of flooding cannot be overstated.
We have to invest in data. Like local journal, if you see the trend of the flooding, something like this happened in 2012. It was coming down again until 2017. 2017, it picked up again. We have to have relatable data now to show us, is it a 5-year cycle? If you go to the Philippines, where I school, they have a bridge spanning almost the whole length of where this flooding. Their bridges are very high. Water can never get to it. It means it's the same thing. It takes the same thing. So when you are in flooding, because it threatens your socio-economic survival, you also have to get above it.
Our focus on Weekend Deal today will be on flooding in Nigeria and probable solutions to curbing its spread. Weekend Deal.
The idea is to provide solution to some of this flood challenge we have in the country, even though a lot of people will tell you that it is our failure to do some, certain things that we ought to have done after the 2012 experience where a lot of lives were lost. But to talk further about this, I have joined me in the studio Professor Mansur Bako Mutazu is the DG NIMET. You're welcome to our studios.
Thank you and good morning, Nigerians.
I often refer to you as the weatherman. It's a pleasure to have you with us. Now, you predicted earlier in the year that we're going to have above normal rainfall experience in the country. You put out your early warning signals. The idea was for people to be stay alert
Very much.
for the possible flood that we are going to experience in the country, so that at least we'll take ownership and take control of the process. But here we are experiencing far worse than 2012.
Exactly.
What happened?
Thank you very much. Good morning, Nigerians. I would like to, first of all, sympathize and also express our condolence to those families that lost their beloved ones during this impact, extreme weather events. Actually, we have made this well known to Nigerians in all strata as far back as February this year, and we've been following up with fortnight updates on the dynamics of the weather and also the imminent high impact weather, especially the flood. But this year, meteorologically, happens to be one of the most extreme weather event here globally, whereby we are experiencing what is called triple dip La Nina, and the La Nina is a sea surface event that enhances rainfall over this part of the world. We've seen this earlier, and we've made all the relevant information and early warning to the relevant ministries, departments, and agencies, including non-governmental organizations, for compliance. And also, we've also provided some advisories on mitigative and adaptive measures that needs to be taken, including also the need for evacuation, especially in high-risk floodplain areas. But the response was not much as expected, especially by the vulnerable communities. I'm aware, and we're also fully involved with Nigerian emergency management agencies and some also state emergency agencies like FEMA in Abuja, and also which they also consume our service, and also we are also involved in the relaying of this service to the many users. But the response by communities also was very poor, and we need to do more, especially in this era of climate change. So globally, we've experienced extreme events, even in the most advanced countries also. But how adaptive we are to this is the question here. And part of the adaptation technique is to provide effective early warning, and we are doing this in the country, which also requires very much early action, and that is what we require. And at this juncture, I would like to mention that we have to switch into community-based flood or climate risk early warning, whereby communities are fully involved in the monitoring and also in providing the alerts to also the members of the communities, and this, I'm sure, will help reduce some of these impacts.
Because the idea is, of course, the early warnings are after. It's expected that the various states, communities would take,
Exactly.
Actions that will mitigate the possible flood in their own communities. But even when you tell people not to build on floodplains, they tend to neglect that. But again, the question is, there is authority that is tasked with the responsibility of ensuring that certain actions are taken. Then what happens? Is it some, level of corruption going on that we don't know about?
I think we need to do more on enforcement, especially we have a brand new Nigerian building code, and which also integrates the application and knowledge of prevailing weather conditions in given environments. And we also have city development and urban and regional planning authorities across the states, including FCT. I know FCT, they are doing excellently very well in also enforcing these regulations. But we need to do more, even beyond also building houses, including some of our land use activities. So, because land use dynamics now is the because of the response to the environment on climate change issues that we are seeing globally. So we need to really align our activities and actions based on the prevailing weather condition and the anticipated one based on relevant forecast. So I guess we need to do more on the enforcement, compliance of the city plan, especially urban regional development agencies and the departments of governments need to align properly with the relevant MDAs to get first-hand what is called the primarily baseline information before embarking on any estate developments or city plans. And when such plans are really on ground, there's need to be community-based enforcements whereby we involve the communities in enforcing the compliance to this, because we do a lot of farming activities within floodplain, which also help to now increase sediment generation in our rivers, and this also creates what is called siltation, and siltation of rivers is one factor also responsible for floods, especially the perennial riverine floods. So there's need to be more of enforcement by city development and urban regional planning departments, and also align most according to our focus, and also based on the provision of Nigerian hydrological services also focus and activities. The missing link here is enforcement, and we need to do more, and also citizens of this country need to take focused information advisories very serious, and also governments, especially at state levels, to key in and integrate their planning and development activities using this information. It's very vital. We've been making this noise, and also we've made several efforts to make sure what we are doing at the federal level is being replicated at state level in what we call the downscaling. But also the response is not too very encouraging, and therefore state governments need to do more, and that is why we give what we call a 4-5 month lead time between the release of the forecast in February and the beginning of the season in May and June, parts of June.
And from your prediction, it's like we still expect more.
Yeah, because now the ITD, that's the division line between the two air masses that now determine the weather zones and seasons in the country, is lined up for oscillating between 9 to 10 degrees north, just a little bit above Abuja FCT. So the rains now, we are experiencing cessation of rains in the north, extreme northern states, and then also in the north central state, Abuja, Amina, parts of Niger, Kogi, and Benue. The rain is also coming to an end, but also we are experiencing dry, intensive thunderstorm activities, short duration but high intensity rains. And in the next 6-7 weeks, we are expecting a lot of rainfall activities in the southern parts of the country, because in the south, where they are experiencing 2 peaks season, a bimodal rainfall activities. So they are approaching their next peak, and these rivers come from drain water from the north into the Atlantic Ocean through these states. And based on the update of the forecast we've provided earlier for October, parts of Delta, Lagos, and some southeastern states also are very prone to this, because they collect all these waters, and then also we have concentration of rainfall activity. So we still have this potential of having such flash flood and riverine flooding, especially in the southern states.
When you mention the states, I suddenly, fear tends to grip me, because already if you see what they're going through at the moment, and then you still say they should expect more rainfall. Now, before we go back to the connection between climate change and what we're experiencing in Nigeria today, let's look at the Lagdo Dam. The Honorable Minister, I listened to him. Of course, we're going to have him much later on the show. He said that the Lagdo Dam, the release of excess water from Lagdo Dam in Cameroon, is not really the major reason why we're experiencing this 2022 flood. Do you share that, sentiment?
Yeah, I think the main issue here is when you look at flood, in a certain river basin, so you consider different factors. What are the land use dynamics within that basin? So I will mention, I listened to the Honorable Minister sometime last week, I think, on Al Jazeera cable network. So I think the point was Lagdo Dam was a factor, release of water. Generally, dams, one of the functions of dam generally, main objective is to control flood. And controlling flood means by controlling natural flow of water, which during peak period of rainfall, and the response by runoff could lead to floods. So by the time you control, you can regulate based on activities and also of the rainfall pattern of that area. So generally, the release of the excess water, because up there in the Sahel, in Chad, in Sudan, you remember July, August, they experienced a lot of flood activities upstream in Cameroon, in Sudan, Central African Republic, and Chad, including N'Djamena was flooded for some months ago. So this excess water definitely was collected into the major dams in Cameroon and other parts of the Sahelian countries. So generally, dam has its own threshold of water and what is called dead storage. So whenever you are approaching the dead storage, so the dam authorities definitely must begin to release. In addition to the natural spillway gates, so they must open also the other gates. So, and with this opening, definitely there will be a lot of water runoff inflow into the downstream, and Nigeria happens to be directly the downstream of the Lagdo Dam from the Cameroon. But on the River Benue, there's no available dam so far for now that should be able to regulate this. That is one. And secondly, also, what is the geomorphology of the river from, let's say, 40 years ago? A lot of land use dynamics have happened, especially with regard to deforestation. So cutting down of trees generally will tend to have more sediments as a result of excess rainfall activities. So sediments will be generated and then also deposited into the river channels, and that will distort the original size, depth, and the width of the river. And with this distortion, so the water runoff that ought not to even lead to floods could have that generating into floods because of the distortion of the original flow. So, and then also, secondly, is effective coordination between the two countries, because river network is a system, and also I'm aware that we have signed an MOU with the two countries, but how effective are we implementing the details of this MOU? So I think the two countries, especially Nigerian Hydrological Agency, including also we've indicated interest also in participating to this, how effective we can monitor the even micro weather within the upstream and also the flow of the water on real time, and be able to advise, because this water enters Nigeria and takes about 3 to 4 weeks before reaching Lokoja.
Well,
so
some people will say that perhaps if the Dasin Hausa Dam was constructed, perhaps it will go a long way in checking the excesses from Lagdo Dam. Now, of course, that's just part of the reasons why we're experiencing this flood, and we need to localize the solution. Talk to me further about that.
You see, climate change being a global phenomenon, there's a saying, the slogan in the climate change arena, that you think globally but you act locally. Thinking globally because the whole atmosphere in the whole world is one. So what is being done in the US and other part of advanced countries in terms of pollution to manufacturing and other production activities will have multiplier implication in other parts of the world, because there is in meteorology what we call general circulation of the atmosphere, that the atmosphere is continuously restless in the sense that wind move horizontally from one region, intercontinental, subcontinental, and local wind. So and also the reaction of the atmosphere also cut across all facets of the globe based on the latitude distribution. So what we do locally can trigger a global inertia of climate to change, and when it changes, it affects everyone. But in the action is to act locally. How does that global phenomena like climate change it triggers local changes based on the prevailing climate in Nigeria? In NIMET, we have more than 130 years available records of climate, and based on that record, we've established that yes, we don't have to rely on global literature that there is climate change. In Nigeria, we have indicators established by NIMET through all standard research, etc., that there's localized evidence of climate change. And one of these is that change in rainfall pattern. So how does that change in rainfall pattern affects livelihood? We have seen the effect now of flooding, and then previous years we have seen multiplier effects of drought and dry spell. So what are those local knowledge available to our communities that 100, 200 years ago, that because of climate variability, because even before the era of climate change, there used to be climate variability, but the magnitude and the return period also is not as strong as what we are seeing in this era of climate change. So local factors, what do we do to adapt to the prevailing? Because this thing has come to stay, because the available greenhouse gases in the atmosphere is enough, even when we stop emission at zero level, to cause climate to continue to change in the next 50 years. So, and the whole era of climate change campaign is to control emission by 5%. So that means there has to be a lot of elements of adaptation, and this adaptation should be localized. I will give an example. We do a lot of deforestation activities, and as a result of that, we cause changes in the dynamics of the environment, including climate. So we could change into renewable energy. So switching into renewable energy, tapping available solar energy. We are so blessed. Nigeria belongs to the tropics. Mm-hmm. We experience 7 to 9 sunshine hours free in the country, and we need to tap into this. And then also some of our activities in farming, especially, it needs to be climate smart. Climate smart in the sense that we don't have to even rely on rainfall activities to go into farming. So we can begin to explore dry season farming, you tapping on the groundwater. And also we need to look at, even in this era of flood, how do we now divert this excess water? Because in the next few months we'll be looking for this water, and it's already to be drained into the Atlantic Ocean. So how do we divert even alternative channels into community small earth micro dams that and depression that could store this water, and we could utilize it for irrigation. We could also utilize it for even tourism and other activities. So and then also our construction and building industry also to key into green infrastructure. Even we have seen now that an average lead based on the previous prevailing weather conditions, road lasts between 10 to 15 years. But with the amount of rain we've been experiencing, Sokoto and parts of Jigawa State experienced 180% increase of rainfall compared to their normal rainfall activities for this year. So that means even our engineers need to factor into the knowledge of weather, and it's available with us in NIMET, in having an integrity test of our infrastructure, and come up with more standardized infrastructure that will stand this shock of extreme weather.
Prof, from all you have said, of course, you just gave the solution to this flood challenge we have in the country. But when it comes to implementation, it's almost as this only stays at the theory level. What do we need to do differently? Just 30 seconds in ensuring that we avert what we're experiencing today in Nigeria.
I think the underlying word here is effective coordination. We have available knowledge, we have available information, and now we have advisories also that are so effective. So we need to bring all stakeholders to come on board, and also including media, during this active flood experience period, we need to have NTA has been doing excellently well. So even the private media organizations, part of their corporate social responsibility, should factor this, and we could create more situation room, and NIMED and NISA and other emergency agencies could be providing information, as we've been seeing in America during hurricane events. So more, including also Nigerian communication, should also liaise with the service providers, MTN and other service providers. Part of the CSR should be providing alert and amber information to these vulnerable communities. And then also state governments need to do more in localizing also some of these activities.
Thank you very much, Prof, for speaking to us. It's quite been an enlightening session, and of course we hope that the authorities concerned will take the necessary action to ensuring that we avert future occurrences, because it's certainly a disaster.
Extreme one indeed.
Thank you very much. Of course, we have been talking with Professor Mansur Bako Motazu, as the Director General NIMED. Right now we go on a break, and after that we'll be looking at other areas as far as flood 2022 flood is concerned in Nigeria. People are going through a lot, and of course hopefully necessary actions will be taken to avert future occurrences. And I know some people are still counting their losses, talking about the economic impact of the flood. Farmlands have been submerged, people's shops have been destroyed, amounting to about trillions of naira, and of course that certainly will have a negative impact on the economy. And some people are projecting that perhaps we will not feel this impact now. Maybe around December, the full impact of what we are experiencing today will set in, certainly. So now let's take Shikiola's report, which borders on the economic impact of the flood.
Agonizing and frustrating may best describe the state of victims of flood in different parts of the country. Communities along the brink of River Niger are the worst hit. One wonders why this level of devastation, despite early warnings from relevant government agencies.
The Honorable Minister of Water Resources personally issued letters to each state governor in Nigeria, telling each state governor, these are the locations in your state that my agency has raised the red flag on, that might be flooded in the course of the year. So those information we are giving to the state governors and other relevant ministries like or MDS.
Obviously, the most devastating flood in many years, much more than witnessed in the year 2012.
Poor urban planning, indiscriminate disposal of waste that have blocked drainages, that is the way they do exist, aggravated the flooding. And then even climate change is human induced anyway. When we cut the trees everywhere, burning gases all up and down, removing the ozone layer, these are equally human activities anyway that induce. So climate change is one side. What we humans are doing to our environment is another factor that is responsible.
Lives have been lost, with death toll put above 600. Properties worth millions of naira have been destroyed. Business activities halted. Farmlands have been submerged in different parts, while the dead in the cemetery were not even spared in Bayelsa. While the supposed direct victims are busy counting their losses, Nigerians may soon come to the realization that all are victims.
When a farm is flooded, harvest becomes a big issue. And when you don't have harvest as a window in a country that don't have sufficient reserve, then people are going to suffer, because the remaining limited number of grains that will be available for either processing or consumption is going to be scarce. Why? Because supply is smaller and demand continue to increase because of over 2% population growth rate. I give you an instance as a practitioner within the rice sector. 2 months ago, a price of rice at the factory as a miller was less than 26,000, and sometimes it fluctuates to 27,000. But a couple of days back, 2 months, within 2 months, the gap has since increased from 26-27 to 32-33. And if you ask in Warri, how much is a bag of rice? You'll be seeing 38 to 40. In some places, 42. What's changed? What changed is because the largest rice farm in Nigeria was submerged in flood. So that is giving you an instance of why Nigeria, as we are moving to December, you might continue to see the price of rice increase. On the second side, you look at gas, energy. You cannot do anything in an economy without energy. You need diesel, you need petrol, you need gas. But those to transport these goods from the southern belt to the northern belt have been stuck in between Lokoja, which seems to be the connection point of the nation.
This coming at a time when inflation is already galloping at 20.77% and monetary authorities hiking rates now at 15.5% to stem the tide. The economy may be more gloomy than imagined.
Central Bank is doing everything possible, no doubt, to boost to reduce inflation. But when you do that, and you do it to the point of 15.5% of NPR, the implication is that the economy will suffer. Because you cannot have reduction in inflation and have economic growth at the same time. You'll be looking for too much in an economy. So we have to settle for one. But you see, when the economy goes down and prices are increasing, because central bank will try best possible, inflation in Nigeria without some of these measures could have been as high as 30% without the measures put in place. But inflation will still be there because we cannot overnight produce all that we need. So that now that we have this challenge, expect reduction in GDP rate, because factors that are before us, indicators that are before us as economists shows that we will likely have a reduced GDP rate and inflation will certainly still increase to the end of first quarter 2023.
Policymakers must align to salvage already bad situation.
Cameroon will always open the dam when it's full. We have an international agreement with them on that. 2, we cannot control the rate of downpour that we have. So there are things we cannot control. But let's see things we can control. How do we protect the drainage lines? The lines that flood has consistently affected. Can we make it a project?
Like in the city here, even before the flooding started, the FCT, Emergency Management Agency, FEMA, as it is called, and other agencies in the city went about to demolish houses, went about to scoop dirt, rubbish from the gutters. Everywhere, even in the rural communities. So we expect that the same thing should be replicated at the state levels.
Experts advise authorities to be more proactive rather than reactive in situations like this.
Some of the economic impact of the flood we are experiencing in the country there from that report. And let me welcome to our studios the Honorable Minister of Water Resources, Engineer Suleiman Adamu. You are welcome to our studios.
Thank you very much.
Now, Honorable Minister, I've listened to you, and from some of our reports you've seen that the flood this year is unprecedented. It's even worse than what we experienced in 2012, yes?
Absolutely.
How did we get here? Is it that we did not learn from the past experience?
Well, first and foremost, you can predict floods, but you cannot predict the intensity of the flood or the extent. That is one. Number 2, nature behaves in mysterious ways. So this year, everywhere in this country, all the measurements, the meteorological measure will show you that what we have is well above normal. It's not by our design, it is just the way nature works. So, and there is no way in this world, the same way you can't prevent earthquake, the same way this is much the same way you cannot stop flooding. But what you can do is to alleviate and ameliorate, and have early warning systems in place to ensure that when the floods come, you can limit the impact, the devastating effect on people and communities, and so on and so forth. So again, it's not that we haven't learnt anything. If there's anything we haven't learnt, is that people have still not learnt to behave, to obey regulations, building regulations, to stop building on water courses, to stop clogging drains, and for local authorities to also ensure that roads have proper drainages, and during the dry season they are cleared of drainage. But that will prevent, maybe reduce the impact on cities and towns, but at the same time, you cannot stop what's happening on the farmlands. Farmlands will always be inundated, especially those around rivers and water courses. And then, of course, as I mentioned in one of my interviews, we have been devastating our environment. We've been degrading our environment, deforesting. By deforestation, we reduce the quality of the soil. We degrade the soil, and therefore, whenever there is a huge rainfall, it comes with a lot of runoff, and that runoff carries a lot of sediments, sand and silt, and deposits into the rivers, and then the carrying capacity of the rivers is eroded. There's a huge quantum of water that the river channels cannot accommodate. Water will always find its course. If it has followed a particular route ever before, one day it will come back and look for its path.
Well, of course, no one can deny that. But one critical thing is the fact that we have NIMET, we have hydrological agency, giving out early warnings, and I know your office, I'm sure you've had the cause to author a lot of letters to state governors to warn them ahead of time for the possible flood in their localities. Is it like nobody cares about some of these warnings, the state governors, the citizens, and all of that?
Well, I think you should ask the citizenry, because we have done our duty. For 7 consecutive years that I've been minister, I have unfailingly unveiled the annual flood outlook. The one for this year, we did it in April. And we tell the nation where we expect flood. To the particular local governments, we do that. So, and we give them, that's an adequate warning, but we also go further to suggest ways and means to prevent this flood. Every year we do that. Then we come back, I write letters individually to the state governors, giving them for a list of all the local government that will be affected. Some take heed, others don't, and so it's what can we do? The constitution is very, very clear. The federal government cannot enforce anything that has to do with building regulations or land use on any state or any community in this country, except for the Federal Capital Territory, Abuja. That's where it's the only place where we have the constitutional mandate to do that. So it is expected that states will do the needful. It's not a question. We should not be looking for blame. Trying to blame Lagdo Dam or Cameroonians or something like that. We need to take our own, responsibility seriously. One other thing that has been I mentioned earlier, this watershed degradation, deforestation, is a very, very serious problem. We have our land has been degraded over decades, and every year we talk about, we've been campaigning at federal level of tree planting campaign and so on and so forth. It's not only about desertification, it's also about restoration of the watershed and the entire ecosystem. So if that is not done, we don't take this thing seriously, we'll continue to have problems. Flood, There are lots of causes. There are so many causes. There are natural causes, but there are also man-made causes.
Okay, now it's good that you mentioned the Lagdo Dam, because there's so much misinformation around there, because some are saying that what we experienced in 2012 was as a result of the release of water from Lagdo Dam, and some are saying part of the reasons why we're experiencing the 2022 flood is also due to the water released from Lagdo Dam. Now, what is the true nature of the story?
I'm very happy you said misinformation, because I've seen so many clips on social media, some new experts talking about it. It's all hogwash. Yes, Lagdo Dam is something to worry about, but it's not very significant as far as the floods even of 2012 are concerned.
Okay.
The issue is only 20% of the waters that flow into Nigeria are transboundary. So rivers Niger and Benue contribute only 20%, about 20% of the total fresh water that we have in the country. Lagdo Dam empties into the river Benue, so it comes to us. But the major source of water and ultimately floods is the water that is within the Nigerian catchment. Water that falls on the Jos Plateau, that spills into the northeast, rivers Hadeja, river Kamadugu Yobe, river Kano, river Kaduna, and of course we also have other rivers, the watershed around the northwest, like river Rima, river Sokoto. They also empty into the river Niger. Then there are so many rivers emanating from the Mambila Highlands within Adama and especially Taraba State. These dams, these rivers also bring in a lot of water, and these are the main sources of water in the river Benue.
Now, since staying with Lagdo Dam, I know in the 80s when it was being constructed, Nigeria was supposed to, construct its own, the counterpart, which was supposed to be like twice the size of
that. Is a false narrative you have been. It's the same false narrative. There has never been any agreement. Why does Nigeria have to agree with Cameroon to build a dam in our own territory? It doesn't make sense. We are downstream. We will be more concerned.
Was it not the Nigerian government that was supposed to do that?
No. If there is anything, our concern should have been, if they build Lagdo Dam, how would it affect our river Benue? That is where we are at the downstream end. There was nothing. I've checked. There's nothing in the ministry. There's nothing anywhere. I've talked to some very critical staff of the ministry that were founding staff of the ministry, experts in hydrology. There is no agreement with that, and it just doesn't make sense. There is no agreement with Cameroon, and it doesn't make sense. Dancing House Dam that is being talked about is a dam that was identified by the Water Resources Master Plan as part of our combined efforts to develop the water resources of the country. And yes, it has potential for hydropower and so on. And yes, and irrigation, but all there's nothing about 300 megawatts or 15,000 hectares. Yeah, there can be a lot of irrigation, but those numbers that are being quoted, I don't know where they got them from. But it is there. It's been on the drawing board, but it has the only bearing it will have, like, is in the sense that we've said we need to have more dams on the tributaries of River Benue. Okay, yes, it can have a check, but if Lagdo Dam release goes beyond Dancing Hausa, you still have to release the water on Dancing Hausa. In any case, there is a mandatory release that you have to do. So even if it's meant to check flood, it will be a temporary measure. But yes, there are dams that need to be constructed along the Benue Basin. And so far, only 3 dams I know have been constructed: Kafinchiri, Dadinkowa, and Kashimbila, which we completed in 2017. Kafinchiri and Dadinkowa were initiated during the Shagari regime. So, but as part of our development, we understand and appreciate that Dancing House Dam is one dam that we need to build. So right now, consultants are working and we expect the engineering design to be completed by first quarter of 2023. You cannot build a dam on River Benue, such a strategy that you want to build a dam on River Benue, and you will not do it properly. You have to provide adequate time for the consultants to do all the necessary studies for that to happen, and that is what we've been doing.
You cited the example of Jabi Lake, whereby you trap water, excess water, which is very good in terms of checking the excess of flood in Nigeria. What creative ways are you engaging them? What creative ways are you engaging them to making sure that they realize the need for, to engage projects like this in order to avert future occurrences? Because from what you're saying now, flood is something that we definitely experience year in, year out.
Well, the Constitution is very clear. You cannot, as a federal government, interfere with the runnings of states. What the federal government does is put up national policies, national guidelines, and there are avenues and channels where the federal government engages with the subnational authorities, for the National Economic Council, the National Council of States, and organs like that. And on their own, the governors have the Governors Forum, where they also discuss their issues. And don't forget that usually, especially with the advent of democracy, it's been like, various states have various governments, different parties, different priorities, and so on. But it's important for subnational governments to address issues that are important to their citizens. A number of times you heard me take example, even the issue of water supply, sanitation, and hygiene. This is not a federal responsibility as such, but we have intervened, we have supported, we have provided a lot of incentives, and yet you see a lot of states that still don't prioritize water, sanitation, and hygiene. So I think the citizenry also needs to engage with their state governments and local government authorities to have stronger advocacy for them to get to do. But also, what is the citizen doing? What are the citizens doing themselves? When you break the law, you know fully well that this is a water course. You come and build illegally. Every year, even in Abuja, houses are demolished, and people keep complaining. You break the law, and you expect the law not to take its course. I mean, we as citizens, we also have a responsibility to government. It's not only the government that has a responsibility to the people also have a responsibility to the government and to their community, to their neighbors. People have a responsibility to their neighbors, and so on and so forth. So what do you do as a citizen? What are we doing as citizens? Every citizen should ask himself, how much has he been contributing to issues related to national development and social well-being of the people? I think we should stop every time we have things are not going well, we just look for someone else to blame. I think we should be looking at the mirror.
Okay. Now, looking at the mirror, of course, I know it's not under your purview, but you're part of this administration. How satisfied are you in terms of response to some of these calamities? Because a lot of people are displaced.
we have levels of response mechanisms in the country. We have the Federal National Emergency Management Authority. Each state has a state emergency management authority. We have, over the years, ecological funds, which are shared between the federal government and the states, which ought to also have been used by everybody. I know at federal level, even recently, a compendium of all the projects that were completed, ecological fund projects that were completed, was launched at the Federal Executive Council, where I think at the last count, over almost 200 projects have been executed. And all these projects are basically related to flood control, soil erosion, and also maybe reclamation and improvement of the ecosystem. So at federal level, I think we've been doing a lot, even preventive measures. And we have new programs like ACRISAL. We're working with the World Bank to improve watersheds and related issues. Now, that's on the preventive side. On the response, I think so far it's been a very overwhelming situation, but I think we've been doing our best. The ministry at federal level, the Federal Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs, Disaster Management and Social Development has been up and doing. NEMA in particular has been working. I know even before the peak of this flood, they've been everywhere. Before the floods in the Niger Benue Basin, the Hadejia Jemare River Basin was the first to be hit, and they were there at the right moment to provide as much succor as they can. But it's a joint effort between the states and the federal government, and I would like to see also the public coming out. In 2012, we had relief organizations also coming to support. I'm aware that some are doing it even now, but also I think one of the delays has to do with the fact that access has been limited, and I'm sure by the time the flood waters recede to such an extent that access can be gained, we can gain access to locations. I'm sure there will be much more coming, but communities and also need to come. All this, the entire citizenry needs to come together really to support this, complement the efforts of government in this respect.
We know that climate change definitely plays crucial, part in what we are experiencing, and it's not just Nigeria. And Nigeria, indeed, it's all over the globe. But now, in terms of adaptation, because NIMET is still saying that the rain still continues, how do we deal with the situation going forward?
The best way, I think, the most critical thing is early warning. Nature. You can't predict nature. You can't. No matter how you can't be certain. You cannot be 100%.
I'm asking because when you say early warning, of course there was early warning, and then if the measures taken were actually adhered to, perhaps the disaster would not have been this bad. And then we're saying that if people are moving from their localities, where are they going to? They don't have a place to go to. If you check.
No, what do you mean? There is sufficient land in this country. 1 million square kilometers. There is a lot of land in this country. It's for the local authorities to have the will to enforce town planning regulations, and for the citizenry to understand, to also appreciate that they are doing things for themselves. I have said it. Everybody knows. Once you build on a water course, you're already inviting trouble. So why invite trouble for yourself? So it's the authorities and the citizenry need to work together. There is a need for this partnership. I mean, your safety is your personal business. You don't need to be told. We have even went to the extent after 2019 to install flood markers in some critical areas. And those flood markers were put in is to warn people. They had a simple maybe blue or red, blue at the bottom, then amber, yellow, that warning you that the water level is getting critical, and red. And people were still building around those places. And the whole idea is to tell you that, okay, these are once you start seeing this approaching the red level, then you better start thinking of evacuation. So maybe we need better evacuation plans also at governmental level. But again, I think those states that were affected, I think the bulk of their responsibility for evacuation, for relocation, for enforcing regulations, I think they are the ones that have to deal with it. Honestly, not at federal level. Well, I'm not shy. I'm not trying to dodge, but that is the facts. That is the constitutional reality on ground.
So there is need to be a better synergy, better understanding on how the workings of the environment are, and of course the local authorities to do whatever they can to further enlighten the people, and the people should also follow the enlightenment they've been given.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Yes, we have been chatting with the Honorable Minister of Water Resources, Engineer Suleiman Adamu. The conversation on the 2022 flood in Nigeria will continue tomorrow bright and early, so do join us. Bye for now.